Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. My name's Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Tuesday afternoon. If you are tuning in live here on Behance, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Mitchell and Masayu and Aubrey from Boston, and Silene, Harry, Jessica, Goncalo. If I mispronounced your name, I do apologize. And Sam. Great to see all of you. Umacorn, Sarah, Heat, Brett. Great to see all of you. All right, this is day number 1 of the latest set of XD Daily Creative Challenges, and I'm excited to be back. This round is all about web design. If you participated in my last challenge, it was all about mobile design. That's the one. It was one of two things, web design or mobile design, and I got it wrong. This time it's all about web design. We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna be designing lots of different elements, and we are going to just dive straight into things. So let me go ahead and hop over to Safari, right over here. And a lot of people in the chat coming on in. We've got Chris from Seattle, and Rajesh from India, Katie, and Ruth says, so I've had a pumpkin spice latte. Yes, I am converting people a pumpkin spice latte. It's definitely a cult. It really is. All right. Head on over to behance.net/challenge/XD. I'm sure Sam will post a link in the chat in just a moment. Go ahead and hit that big blue register button at the top so you're notified when new challenges are released. And if you missed yesterday's welcome stream, let me quickly go through what this whole shindig is all about. So every single day, Monday to Friday, except that first Monday, which was yesterday, you're going to receive a challenge. And this time, again, like I mentioned, it's all about web design. So every day we're going to be designing out something related to web design, something you can design and, use on your website or your whatever it might be that you're designing, even a desktop application. You can join us in our Discord community chat. If I hop over here, here's Discord. We have about 60,000 designers in Discord, which is incredible. A lot of amazing people, 1,900 people online right now. Great mentors, some people from Adobe, some moderators, and a lot of you are already diving into the challenge tab or challenge channel, and you're already uploading some of the pricing tables that we're going to be designing today, which is wonderful. And you might be wondering, how do you even know what to do? Well, let me show you. I'll get to that in a second. Again, you can watch us live. I'm live 2 o'clock Pacific time every day during these challenges, and you can share your work like I showed you on Discord or Behance, on Behance using the keyword XD Daily Challenge. Brett's asking, is this challenge progressive? It is not. So every day it's going to be something completely different, but all related to web design. Right down here, you're going to go ahead and grab the templates by pressing Getting Started. And you can also watch this live stream afterwards. But if we go ahead and hop into today's template, with every challenge, probably every challenge, there's also going to be a standalone video that you can watch on YouTube. So if you're short on time or you don't prefer live streams, which is totally fine, you can definitely go ahead and jump into YouTube, watch this video, and see what we're creating. So you can get a little bit of a head start before this live stream even starts. So here's the template. Again, we're going to be designing a pricing table for web experiences, and we're going to be using repeat grids to help us out in this process. Here's some inspiration down here towards the bottom, and a wonderful resource booklet that Andrea Hawk put together. Andrea Epi, that is her new name. And over here to the right, you can toggle between the different states and get a whole ton of resources, which is great. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and begin. Here's our pricing table artboard right over here to the right. And if anyone has questions throughout this process, definitely throw them in the chat. I will be taking a peek from time to time. Now, what I'm going to do here is we're going to start with a nice clean artboard. In my example on YouTube, I did start with a darker artboard, I believe. We'll start with a lighter artboard. Completely up to you how you start. But over here on the right-hand side is your properties. So you'll be able to control color appearance. If you have text selected, which I'll show you in a moment, you'll be able to do that here as well. So what we want to do is we want to start off with a rectangle. And most designs start off with rectangles, if we're being honest, right? So over here to the left, we have our tools, and I'm going to grab the rectangle, shortcut key R, and I'm going to drag out our first pricing table. I'm going to position it in the center of my document. I can also use the alignment and distribution options at the top if I want to position it very quickly. Beautiful. Now, we have our first shape created. Now you're going to notice on this rectangle, on the insides, on all four corners, we have this lovely little handle. And this will allow us to round out the corners of this shape. So we can round it out to about 32 pixels possibly. You can also enter a value directly within your properties inspector. Let's go for 32. And for this shape, we can start styling this up. And I'm going to go very bold with this particular table. So let's go ahead and choose a nice bold. Ooh, that is bold. That is definitely a bold shape. We're going to go for a nice bold pink. And we will set a little bit of a border. We're going to set a white border on the inside, about 2 or 3 pixels. Now you're not seeing it right now because it's a white border against a white background, right? I'm going to drop the opacity somewhere around 25%, right? And that way, if I do decide to change the color of the background at some point in the future, we have a nice subtle border that helps separate it from that background, which is kind of fun, right? You know what, maybe we'll stick with the black background. Looks pretty fun. And a lot of people are in the chat talking about pumpkin. That's the way I like it. All right, so we've got our shape, and of course you can, drag it in if it's a little bit too large, but we can always change that later on. Now, at the top of this particular tier, we may want to kick it off with which tier this is and maybe any other information that might be necessary, right? So we're going to grab the rectangle one more time, again, shortcut key R, and drag out a shape right about here. And this time we're going to round it out completely. So we're going to grab this handle and drag it on in. We don't need a border for this one. We may want a shadow, possibly, but we're going to leave it without a shadow for now. And on the inside, we want some text to let users know what tier this is. So I'm going to grab my text tool, shortcut key T. You can also find it over to the left-hand side. I'm going to click, and we're going to go ahead and type out, this is actually going to be the second tier. So second tier. We're going to have the middle tier. We're going to do the middle tier first, and we're going to break out into the other ones. And I'll show you why in a second. And I do have the Josephine Sands typeface selected over here to the left, to the right. It looks pretty good. It's interesting. Let's go ahead and place it on top. And of course, the white text against the white board, a background, not going to work, right? So I'm going to go ahead and either change the color within the properties inspector over to the right, or using the shortcut key I on my keyboard and clicking. And that looks pretty good. I might want to make this a little bit smaller. Let's try about 22. And I'm going to press the play button at the top right-hand corner just to see how things are looking. That looks pretty good. You can also hold down your Alt-Option key and move your cursor to the edges of objects to see how far it is away from that side, right? Now, I'm going to do one additional thing here. We're going to talk a lot more about that, I believe, in the second week. But I do want to place both of these objects into a group. So I have this second tier here, right? I'm going to also select this container. So I'm holding on Shift and clicking. And then I want to place them into a group, Command or Control G. And I'm going to call this tier. Now, what I'm going to do, and again, we're going to talk a lot more about this in a future challenge, is I want to enable padding within the Properties Inspector, which is going to look at where this text is placed in relationship to the background layer, and it's going to automatically set padding. So you can go dive in and make changes if you want to. So right now it's set to 29 pixels on the right. Let's go for like 32, a nice even 32 on both sides. And then if you need to, you can always pull this in, and that looks pretty good, right? Take another look. And you can also hold down your S key and drag individual sides. There we go. And the benefit of this is once we get to the next tier, we can dive in here and change this to third, and it's automatically going to resize, which is great, right? Now, this tier might be the most popular. So what we're going to do, we might want one more element over here to the right that lets users know that this is the most popular tier. So with that rectangle one more time, I'm going to drag out another shape. It's going to be a little bit thinner than this one over here to the left. I'm going to place it behind that layer by dragging. And in terms of the styling, we will go ahead and round this out one more time, but we're going to go for a much darker color for this particular call out. So we're going to set the color at pure black, but because that stands out way too much, we're going to drop the opacity so that it blends in really nicely with that pink in the background. Now we can go ahead and let's go ahead and type out most popular. And for this one, it is more or less secondary information. So I'm going to drop the size. Let's try 18, and I'm going to bump the color up to white so it's nice and readable, and stretch this out. Beautiful. Now I'm going to make sure to select all of these objects, place them into a larger group, and call this tier header. And I want to make sure that it's centered inside of this container so I can drag, and you're going to notice we have smart guides that help us out throughout this process, and we're going to place it right about there. Take another quick peek. It's looking okay. I might want to move this over just a little bit and just kind of finesse it into place. All right, we can always work on some of the spacing a little bit later. Now, right down here underneath this tier header, we might want some text that kicks off what exactly you're going to be getting with this tier. So with the text tool one more time, previously I simply clicked, right? And I was able to type. However, in this case, we want to define the width of this text layer. So I'm going to click and drag over, and I can start typing. And this is going to set an auto height text box. So let's go ahead, our most popular tier, and let's say, if you're a freelancer, this is perfect for you. Now, this is secondary information, so we may want to make a few changes to this particular layer. We might want to bump this down in size just a little bit, right? We might also want to adjust the line height. And if we need to, we can always pull this out a little bit more so that we capture that extra word. Aubrey's asking, why can't elements be dragged into a component grouping in the assets panel? I believe from what I've asked the team this before, it's also the same thing with masks. It's a back-end engineering thing that they have to get to be able to improve. I don't know the exact reasoning behind it, but it's something that they want to improve in the future. All right, so we have some text that looks pretty good. Might be a little bit small, but we can always change that later on. And during the challenge number 4 on Friday, we're going to talk all about assets. But just to kind of kick that off a little bit, at the bottom left-hand corner of your interface, we have our libraries. And this is going to contain all of our document assets. Also, you'll be able to click back and go to your other libraries that you might have in your Creative Cloud account. And we have some colors and character styles and components in there for you if you just want to dive in and get started. But what I always recommend is select the object that you want to add, and then go ahead and press that plus button just to add those particular colors, or if you select a character style or a text layer, you can add that there as well. And we're going to talk a lot more about that on Friday. All right, so we have our subheader looking pretty good. And now right down below here, we may want to start explaining what all these benefits are, what they will be getting and what they will not be getting. Let me go ahead and zoom on in. And we're going to start with some checkboxes. Cornell is saying, I wish we could animate masks in XD. You can animate masks. You can definitely animate masks and paths, and there's a few things you can't animate at the moment, but masks you can definitely animate, unless you're trying to do something a little bit different, but let me know. So I have my ellipse selected, shortcut key E, and I'm going to drag one out. There we go. And this is going to be a benefit you will be getting. So I'm simply going to keep the fill at white. That looks like a pretty good size. Might want to make it a little bit bigger. And on the inside of this particular ellipse, we may want a check mark, right? So we basically show the users that this is what they're going to be getting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my grid. So Command or Control apostrophe. You can also do that by selecting your artboard and then turning on the square grid over here at the bottom right-hand corner. Now, the reason I turn this on is so that I can grab my pen tool, shortcut key P, and simply click, click, and click. And it snaps really nicely to this grid. So I can very easily create a check mark, right? I can turn off my grid the exact same way. And I might want to pull in the color from this background. I can do that by either clicking on the eyedropper beside border and clicking, or if I go into my assets, I can right click and apply as border. There we go. Now, once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and bump up the size quite a bit. I might want to round out the caps of this particular check mark and also round out the joints down here at the bottom. Now it's a little bit too large. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, position it in the center, and take another peek. And I stress this all the time. If you're new to my streams, you're going to hear me say this a lot. If you're designing very zoomed in, like I do all the time, you lose track of how things actually look. So just go ahead and hit the play button at the top and just take a quick peek. You can also take this preview window and put it on another monitor if you want to, or just kind of move it off to the side so that as you're designing, you're going to notice that it's updating in real time. So you can get a better view of how things are looking, right? It helps quite a bit. All right, so we have our check mark and we have our ellipse. I'm going to make sure to select these both, put them into a group, and call this check mark. Now over to the right, we're going to want to describe the benefits that they will be getting. So with the text tool, I'm going to go ahead and type out benefit, I can't spell, you will be getting. Pop this right about here. It's about 16 pixels from the left. That looks pretty good. And text-wise, not bad. We might want to bump this up just a tiny little bit to about 18 so it really stands out, right? Now, we will be adding this to a repeat grid. So one thing we might want to do, just to save us a little bit of hassle, is convert this text layer from auto width to auto height, because the repeat grid will cut off at a certain point, and if your text goes outside of that, it's going to be essentially masked out. So I'm going to switch this over to auto height and drag this to the furthest point that I want this text to go, right here. All right, once that has been done, we have all the elements that we need to create our first repeat grid. So we have this text layer, and we also have this check mark over to the right, the left. I always get that wrong. Don't know why. I'm going to hold down my shift key, make sure both of them are selected, and then at the top right-hand corner, you're going to find your repeat grid option. So go ahead and press that, and boop. Wonderful. All right. Now, if you've never used a repeat grid before, you're going to notice two new handles, one on the right over here, and one at the bottom. And this will allow you to drag out additional cells going down. So we might have, let's say, 4 benefits, right? And you can dive in here and make changes. This is an awesome benefit. Just like that. And of course, you can make changes to all of these if you want to. And as we're going to explore in a future challenge, in repeat grids, you can also drag in bulk images. You can drag in 100 images into these cells, and it's going to just populate all of them. You can also drag in text files. I'll show you that as well at some point. So we have our first repeat grid, and this is going to be our benefits. And then right below, we may want one additional repeat grid of the benefits you will not be getting. So I'm going to duplicate this downwards. I'm going to hold down Alt-Option and drag on down, right? And then we're going to make some changes because we want to really let users know that they will not be getting these benefits. So in this one, we don't want the check mark, and we want to style this particular ellipse a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on a border, set the color to white. You're not going to see it right now, but we're going to go ahead and set the background color, or the fill color of this ellipse to black, and just drop it. So it looks like a nice hollow check mark, right? Or circle. I'm going to bump the size a little bit of the border. That could do. And what I want to do is dive in here and make changes to these benefits. Again, you can either dive in and write something new. So benefit you will not be getting, or you can just leave it as is. Now, as you're noticing, it pushed the changes of the styling to all the other ones for this particular check mark. And that's because it's a styling change. If I were to also change the color of the text, it's going to push that as well. But actual changes to the wording of text layers do not get pushed to the other cells, and that's by design, right? But if you do want to do that just for placeholder text, you can simply grab this text layer here, duplicate it, and then delete the other one. And all of a sudden, you've kind of pushed those changes, right? All right. And I would expect all of you, as you're working on these challenges, to put actual copy in here and not just weird placeholder text. All right, so we have our benefits that we will be getting. We have our benefits that we will not be getting, and maybe we'll drag this up just so they have about 4 benefits they will be getting and 3 benefits they will not be getting. Now, down here at the bottom, we may want to wrap this up with 2 additional layers. We might want a text layer with the price and also a button. So one more text layer, we are going to click, and let's go ahead and type out, maybe this one is $13.99 per month. And we want this one to really stand out. So I'm going to grab this handle at the very bottom of this text layer, drag it on up. We're going to change the color to white. And I may want the price to stand out a little bit more than the /month. So diving into this text layer, I'm going to select /month. Maybe we'll drop the weight to about semi-bold possibly. And we can drop the size as well. Let's try 24. We'll center it, position it in the middle. And then right below, we may want a button. So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, drag one out. It's going to be a nice long button. I'm going to round out the corners slightly in this one, so not as much as the shapes at the top. And then on the inside, we're going to type the word choose. And we're going to make this one nice and bold. We're going to sample our background color, or you can do that from the assets as well. And if we take a look, it's looking pretty good. Not there yet, but not bad, right? I may want to just add a very subtle shadow to this particular shape. Bump that down. Maybe I'll add a little bit of color in here. Blur it quite a bit. Maybe bump it down a bit more. Maybe. Looks okay. Very subtle, right? And then maybe to separate the price down at the bottom from the benefits, we may want a very subtle line. So I'm going to grab the line tool over here to the left, draw one out. And we'll go ahead and set the color to white and maybe drop the opacity. You know what? Pure white looks pretty good. That could do. All right, so I'll go ahead and position these. I'm going to make sure to group this button, and we're going to talk about components in a future challenge. So we're not going to touch on that right now. There we go, and I can just move this on up. And we're also going to talk a lot more about padding, which I kind of showed you a little bit earlier, but one thing you'll be able to do is select all of this information, pop it all into a group, and I'll just call this tier. And then you can turn on padding so that you can dive in and make changes to this. Or if you dive in and need to rearrange some things or make things bigger, as you're moving them around, you can even move side to side, the background automatically adjusts. But again, we're going to talk more about that in the future. So now that we have one of our shapes looking pretty good, or one of our tiers, I should say, we can duplicate it to create our next tier. So I'll duplicate this over to the left, holding down Alt-Option. And now I might want to dive in here and just change the background color. Maybe this will be a nice purple, right? And I'll just make sure to update some of these text layers and our check mark in here. Set the border color. And because it's a repeat grid, it pushes those changes to all the others. And this might be our first tier. And we don't want this one because it's not the most popular. We can change the text, and then maybe you're only getting 3 benefits possibly. We're going to drag this on up.
Wait a minute.
And there we go. I should probably change this to, what would this be, $9.99 a month? Probably, right? And then we'll drag one over to the right. And this one will be the 3rd tier, which will be nice and blue.
A damn fine cup of coffee.
Dive in here, sample the color, and this one might be $19.99 a month, and you will be getting all the benefits. So I can delete that one and drag out some benefits down here. And now we have our 3 tiers, which looks great, right? And of course, you can do some fun things with presentation, to really create your presentation. You can make sure that this one is at the top, and you can maybe overlap these a little bit. You can also add a little bit of a shadow, maybe to this container here. We'll add a little bit of color, just like we did with that button. We're going to blur it quite a bit so it extends over to these tiers as well. And there we go. And just like that, we have our pricing table with 3 tiers. So, big thank you to everyone who has tuned in today. Hope you enjoyed this first daily creative challenge. Again, this video is up on my YouTube channel. There is a link inside of the template. Big thank you to everyone who has tuned in. I will see you all tomorrow with day number 2, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with more Adobe live content. Thanks, everyone.